So this is to remind you that this is the course How to Be Negative. And for a couple of minutes, I will now present the essay that I wrote for this month that is dedicated to death drive and being towards death. And essay is called, the one that I wrote is called Between Us Death, Being With Towards Death, and the being with toward death is concept that I invented, introduced. Maybe there are other people who invented the same concept, but nonetheless, the way I'm developing it in this essay, I think it's specific to what I was trying to say. So it's Heideggerian, this modification of Heideggerian concept, and Heidegger has concept of being towards death, which is in certain ways similar to Freudian death drive, but in certain ways, of course, different because it's existential philosophy, it's not psychoanalysis, and a general framework is different. But what is the similarity between both death drive and being towards death, and why I value both of these terms, is that both Freud, Sabine Spielrein, with their concept of death drive or death instinct, and Heidegger with his concept of being towards death, they would show that death is not opposite to life, but rather comprehend death as structural to existence, as something that defines human existence, human mortality, and even death as central in relation to life. And life would rather, based on those concepts, should rather be seen as unfoldment or representation, death representative. So Heidegger, when he's talking about Dasein, specifically human existence, he introduces concept of being towards death as something to describe this Dasein, human existence, as something that is crucial for existence. So for Heidegger, existence is shaped by its limit. We are shaped by our mortality, that existence is something that is unfolding, moving toward its annihilation, moving towards its undoing. It is a process of dying in a way. So being is an unfoldment of death, which means that death is not opposite of life, it's rather structural to life. And death is what defines this human existence. And we can say that Dasein, human being, is nothing at its heart, and being towards death captures this principle that what unfolds is structured by its limit, its approaching its annihilation. It is within the process of annihilating itself, and this is what appears as being. And the important thing for being towards death is the concept of Heidegger's concept of anxiety, which he claims that being towards death is essentially an anxiety. So this Dasein, human existence, is anxious by default, by definition. And anxiety, unlike we normally think about it, that this is distortion or certain secondary distortion of our existence in the world, like disturbed mental state that we need to fix. For Heidegger, it's the contrary. It's more basic than the opposite of anxiety, that feeling at home, coziness, comfort in the world. It's rather getting in touch with our specific being, which is being towards death, disclosing the truth of existence, the not being at home, the thrownness into existence, the groundlessness of Dasein existence, and it's getting in touch with maybe this nothingness that unfolds and that presents itself as being, as existing. So in a way, this to be anxious, in a sense, to feel anxious, is to be already dead, is to get in touch with your own mortality, with the limit that defines you, with this nothingness at the heart of being, which defines who you really are. So feeling thrownness uncanniness of existence, which is the basic, the most profound quality of existence as such. So anxiety is the special mood, the grounding mood for Heidegger, something that discloses Dasein, discloses reality of existence. My problem with Heidegger being towards death, and with other as in the same way, like with other some of the other concepts, that philosophical concept that include death, is that they sometimes might be negating death, not actually talking about death, but instead of trying to not to talk about death and being towards death is kind of at least partially like that, precisely because Heidegger develops it within the framework of this Dasein as anxiety and being towards death as something that has individualizing ability. So for Heidegger, being towards death and anxiety, it's about individual. It's like this person, not this particular person, but it's within, not only that we feel within ourselves, but it what helps us to individualize ourselves. It's mostly still about life existence. It's not purely negative concept that has to do with loss and negation, but it also introduces this positive quality of individualization, attaining authentic existence, and it's confined within the boundaries of the individual. For Heidegger, it's framed as anxiety is kind of like something good that we shouldn't escape, and that force that helps us to individualize, to attain this authentic individualization, about self-actualization in a way, which for me betrays death in two ways. First, it's confined to individual. He's not talking about being towards death as something that structures relationship with others. It's within individual, and it's also reappropriated by Heidegger in his comprehension as something that helps you to become who you are. Because, for example, no one can die for you, and that's like tragedy of your existence that defines you and makes your existence authentic once you get truly in touch with it, something like this. And others, for me, the question was Mitsein, his concept of Mitsein, being with, which he recognizes that human existence is existence. We are with others in the world. We are social beings and we exist with others. But this concept of anxiety and being towards death is something that has to do with individual for him, while the Mitsein, being with others, should be rather, according to Heidegger, should be represented as fleeing, escaping anxiety and escaping being towards death. So for him, anxiety exists within individual, within particular individualized Dasein, and helps Dasein to attain authentic existence. And others are associated with the opposite of anxiety, with escape from anxiety, with the opposite of individualization. Like this, it's death is the limit of one own particular Dasein, particular individualized existence, the Dasein, and it kind of framed within this perspective of individualization. And for me, the question is, not only for me, but several other thinkers, what about anxiety of relationship? Or what if, that's what I'm trying to say in this essay, that anxiety not only maybe instead of seeing it as individualizing quality in it, rather one may see Mitsein as structured by also by anxiety and having quality of being toward death, meaning that anxiety is not only, it's not only within us, but mostly in between us. So structures not our individualization or our particular Mitsein, but also is responsible for structuring, for being structural for our relationship, for something that connects us. So other is not escape from anxiety, not tranquilization of anxiety, but rather also structured, the relationship with other are structured as being towards death. Also, anxiety is structural for relationship. And maybe we can say that the fact that it's not a fact, but the theory that it's structural for Dasein, for particular Dasein, might be seen as secondary in relation to this anxiety or being towards death that is structural to relationships. So anxiety, it's not only within us that helps us to individualize, but for me, mostly in between us. And what defines our relationship and our connection, bond with each other. There are several attempts to actually present anxiety and being towards death as social, not as necessary individualizing. Like with Chris Molson, he would say that since we all feel anxiety, this is what we share, and this is certainly universal concern, and therefore it's the quality of Mitsein too. But how he means it, it's rather that because it's within each of us, it's still within. But on the basis of it, it's kind of universal too. It's not that for him, it's not the quality of relationship as such. It's rather still quality of the individuals. Then individuals come together because something what is within them, they share. For me, it's the opposite. Is the sharing is itself anxious, and the connectivity as such is anxious. And I would say something like that: love itself is determined by being towards death, and every encounter is marked by finitude, every connection shaped by impossibility of its permanence, meaning that death is the only thing that we share. It's not being towards death is not the quality of individualization, but being towards death as structural for relationship. And for me, this relationship, a bond, is what comes first, or at least it's less illusionary than illusion of separation from the other. So being towards death is a quality of relationship, not a quality of individualization. And this psychoanalytic maybe idea that what we have in common is nothing, on whatever we have, whatever we share is loss or lack. There is nothing else for us to share except for lack, or any having includes lack, and lack is structural to it. It's similar to this existential type of thinking, where being towards death is a quality of relationship, what connects, a quality of love, and not that much quality of individual that has individualizing capacity. And for example, for Heidegger, the problem for him, in my view, his problem is that the key horror of human, of this existence, Dasein existence, is that we are, no one else can die for us, that we have, that we are mortal, that we have this limit, that we are kind of waste. There is this wastefulness in existence. Like the ultimate horror is one's own death, and we need to face it. This mortality, the limit, kind of embrace it or whatever. For me, I think that the death of the other is more horrible than our own death, and maybe the fear of our own death, our own limit, is where we escape, is less horrible than the death of the one who, of the relationship, or the death of the one who we love, of someone else death, or death of love as such. Like it's a relief. Our own death is not the key tragedy. It's a relief from more structural tragedy of this death that we encounter, that we live through in any relationship that we have. Those relationships are structured by its end. They're already approaching the loss of relationship. So wherever we have, we just embracing the loss of the opposite of not having. And this what structures human love. It's not presence. It's quite negative love is kind of the opposite of love, is about void and the absence of love, that the positive quality of love only kind of its partial manifestation, but not the basic manifestation. And this is what I mean when I say that love is itself determined by being towards death. It's not individualizing quality, it's rather quality of love. So death is the only thing that we share, this loss, only thing that we have in common, what at the same time keeps us together and separates us. And this horror is there, the key horror is there, not in our own mortality or our own limit. And this is what I would define as being with towards death. So Heidegger has concept of being with, Mitsein, being with others, which he doesn't develop that much except for just admitting that we already thrown into existence with other in certain predefined ways of the world, ways of thinking, of being. So he has concept being with, which is Mitsein, and he has concept of being towards death, which is something that defines Dasein, particular being. And I think this being with towards death, it's what defines the state of being with, that it's this withness. The bond itself is defined through its loss, through the death of the other. Whoever we are with or whoever we are love, we are approaching the loss of them. And this is what defines our love. So that this kind of, if you combine two of his concepts, it's one, you're actually going to get one great concept, but completely opposite to what he meant with those two concepts. Because as I mentioned, being towards death is kind of being outside of the link bond with the other. And here, if you combine those anxieties within relationship with the other and what defines those relationship, for me, it's much better. So I would claim that we are being towards death and we come together through being towards death. But also maybe the other way around, that being towards the quality of the anxiety of love or social bond as something that is defined by its annihilation, by its limit. It's not there, this quality is not there just because we are in the first place those being towards death. It's rather that maybe the other way around, we are being towards death as individuals because the bond between us that is structural to us as individuals is defined by being towards death. So the social being towards death, being with towards death, would be the rather the basic one in relation to this individual being towards death. And the important thing, the last thing, is that I'm criticizing in this essay and in some other essays too, the basic concept of basic subject of Western philosophy, which is the subject separated from others, subject that one pretends to be autonomous, or at least is demanded to be separated from others and autonomous. And in Heidegger, being towards death and anxiety, you can really see how he's still not questioning, like, this is the subject for him, the subject that's supposed to be autonomous, separated from others. And this is where Heidegger places his concept of being towards death and anxiety. It's like individualizing, confining you within your own borders, within your own limits, like letting you be individualized. And for me, this subject is a child, really. It's not only man, it's not only autonomous, but it's also in the position of the child who wants to separate, who is demanded to be separated, and separated from whom? Like, who is this Mitsein, initial Mitsein with others? The initial Mitsein is mother. So it's like in relation to mother that we have this idea we need to separate, and there is ethical demand in Western philosophy to separate, to be autonomous, which for me means it's from position of a subject child who is so desperate to separate precisely because it's impossible. Like, still this separation is within the bond. You cannot separate, and this is why you struggle. Like, you articulating the inability to separate precisely within the struggle to separate. So I was questioning what if we switch and being towards death? Anxiety, Heidegger's anxiety is about this subject who's supposed to become separate. And I was trying to switch, to experiment with switching the basic subject of philosophy or subject of when we talk about being towards death to pregnant subject, which is the opposite of subject that is demanded to be separate. It is double subject, it is mit-sein, the being within Dasein. So it's not strictly Dasein. It's not about individualization that much. It's a mit-sein as such and Dasein at the same time. And I know it sounds strange that we take this subject as central, but it's also strange and quite random subject to choose the non-pregnant one, because why the subject that Heidegger is talking about, not pregnant. So if you take this subject as central, the subject that is mit-sein in itself, and it's not only about pregnant people, it's just about subject as such, because for me it represents the subject as such, as not separated, as this inability, more radical mit-sein that in Heidegger, the one that you cannot separate from. So if you take as central basic subject the pregnant subject, where would this being towards death, or where would we locate the anxiety? The anxiety would be different ways to go from here, but anxiety would be precisely in this in connectedness. We can see, for example, a child or the loved one as extension of one own fragility, as extension of one own wound of being. It's like multiplying anxiety. And I think I'm mentioning somewhere example of that we would probably prefer to sacrifice our own life than witness death of someone we love, like our children, for example, or just someone we love. And this is how we measure love, that we would prefer our own death to the death of the loved one. And that could be the definition of love. So if what is happening in pregnancy, in this doubling within, or just in love, when you are these boundaries between subject are blurred, is extension of your own anxiety, of your own fragility, of your own wound of existence, as doubling and multiplying it. So, and this anxiety is what actually connects. And in this interpretation, it would be quality of mit-sein, anxiety and being towards death as quality of mit-sein, of being with, this withness, not and only secondary, as maybe escape from this basic anxiety. It would be personal, individualized anxiety, but only as an escape, as something secondary from this more profound anxiety of love. And the last slide, I think that this being towards death, or being with towards death, it does not something that produces individualization, but it produces and something different entirely, love. So while for Heidegger it was still discussing being towards death and discussing anxiety in a context of Dasein, in a context of what we call, and he didn't call it subject, but nonetheless it's individualized, singular Dasein being. For me, it's rather not about singularized Dasein. It's rather about being with, and the quality of being with, and in particular, quality of love. And love here would be not the escape from anxiety, in the comfort of existence, in the comfort of the other, like it was for Heidegger. It would be the opposite. We escape into ourself, into illusion that we can be separate and live authentic life from the more basic anxiety, more structural anxiety of connection, of love. All right, so I'll stop recording and I ask if you have questions.